A normal evening, just like any other, until a person casually says something that doesn't make sense at the time. A strange sentence, a quiet warning, something that feels off, but everyone ignores it. And then, days, weeks, sometimes even hours later, that exact thing happens, not coincidence, not luck, something far more unsettling. Tonight on The Dark Brief, we're diving into stories that blur the line between intuition and something we can't explain. Real people who, in chilling detail, predicted their own deaths, and no one took them seriously until it was too late. Now, before we go deeper, if you enjoy dark, mysterious stories like this, make sure you hit like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, and it tells me you want more stories that stay with you long after the video ends. There is something deeply disturbing about knowing your end is coming. Most people fear death because it's unknown, but imagine knowing when or how, and still being unable to stop it. That's where our first story begins. A man in his mid-40s living a completely normal life started telling his coworkers something strange. At first it sounded like a joke. He said he had a feeling, not just any feeling, but a very specific one. He told them, "I won't make it to next Friday." People laughed it off. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe it was just dark humor. But he didn't laugh. He repeated it multiple times throughout the week. Same sentence, same calm tone, no panic, no drama, just certainty. By Wednesday, some people began to feel uneasy. It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. There was no fear in his voice, almost like he had accepted it. On Thursday, one of his colleagues even asked if he was okay. He simply replied, "You'll understand soon." Friday morning came, and he never showed up to work. Later that day, news spread that he had died in a car accident on his way in. The exact day he said he wouldn't make it to. No one could explain it. Was it intuition, a coincidence, or did he know something others couldn't? Then there's the story of a young woman who wrote something in her journal just hours before she died. She had a habit of documenting her thoughts, nothing unusual, but on that particular night, her writing took a darker turn. She described feeling like something was wrong, like she was being watched, even though she was alone. And then she wrote a sentence that still chills people who read it today. "If something happens to me tonight, it wasn't an accident." Those were the last words she ever wrote. Later that night, she was found dead in her apartment. The case was officially ruled as an accident, but many people close to her never believed that. Because how do you explain that final entry? How do you explain that feeling she had just hours before everything ended? Sometimes these predictions aren't spoken. They're subtle, almost hidden. A teenager once posted a message online that seemed completely normal at first, just another late-night thought. But buried in the post was a line that stood out after the fact. "I feel like tomorrow is going to be my last day." No one responded to that part. People focused on the rest of the message. It didn't seem serious. The next day, he was gone. His post resurfaced quickly. People started sharing it, trying to understand. Was it a cry for help, a coincidence, or something deeper? Because the way it was written, it didn't feel emotional. It felt certain. And that's what makes these stories so unsettling. It's not just the prediction, it's the calmness that comes with it. There was also a man who made a phone call to his family late one night. Nothing unusual about that. But the conversation took a strange turn. He told them he loved them, repeatedly, more than usual. When they asked why, he said, "I just feel like I won't get another chance to say it." They tried to reassure him, told him everything was fine, but he didn't sound convinced. The next morning, he was found dead. No warning signs, no clear reason, just that one call that now feels like a goodbye he somehow knew was coming. But not all predictions are verbal. Some are actions. A woman once insisted on giving away her personal belongings, seemingly out of nowhere. Jewelry, clothes, even things that had sentimental value. When people asked why, she said, "I won't need them anymore." Everyone thought she was going through something emotional, maybe a life change. Maybe she was planning to move, but days later, she passed away suddenly. Looking back, every item she gave away, every conversation, it all felt like preparation, like she was closing chapters before the final one arrived. And then there are the cases that are almost impossible to explain. One man reportedly told his friends exactly how he would die. Not just that he would die, but the specific way it would happen. They thought he was being dramatic, maybe influenced by something he saw or read. But when it actually happened, it matched his words almost perfectly. Details that couldn't just be guessed, circumstances that were too specific to be coincidence. That's when people start asking questions that don't have easy answers. Is it possible that some people somehow know? Science would say it's intuition, the brain picking up on subtle signs we don't consciously notice, patterns, risks, behaviors. But that explanation doesn't always fit, not when the predictions are this precise, because intuition doesn't usually come with timestamps. It doesn't usually come with exact details, and yet these stories exist. There's also something called a sense of impending doom. It's a real psychological and medical phenomenon. People sometimes feel like something terrible is about to happen, without knowing why. Doctors have even documented cases where patients express this feeling shortly before sudden medical events. But again, that doesn't explain everything, because in many of these stories the person wasn't sick. They weren't in danger, at least not obviously. And still, they knew, or at least, it feels like they did. Another chilling case involved a man who recorded a video message, not for social media, not for anyone specific, just a general message, talking about life, regrets, and things he wished he had done differently. At one point he says, "If you're watching this, I guess I didn't make it." The video wasn't meant to be seen right away. It was found later, after his unexpected death. People who watched it described an eerie feeling, like he wasn't guessing. He was confirming something he already knew. And then there are the stories that never make the news, personal stories, shared quietly between families and friends. Like a grandmother who suddenly became very affectionate, more than usual, calling relatives she hadn't spoken to in years, saying things like, "Take care of yourself and don't forget me." At the time it felt sweet, emotional maybe, but after she passed away just days later, those calls felt different. They felt like goodbyes. The human mind is powerful. It can sense danger, process information, and react faster than we realize. But can it truly predict something as final as death? Or are these just coincidences that feel meaningful because of what happened afterward? That's the question that stays with you, because for every story that gets attention, there are probably many more that don't. Moments where someone said something strange, and it meant nothing, until it meant everything. And maybe that's what makes this topic so unsettling. It forces you to think about the last things people say, about the small signs we ignore, about whether some endings come with warnings, or if we only see those warnings once it's already too late. As you sit here listening to this, think about the people in your life, the conversations you've had, the moments that felt a little off, but you brushed them aside. Would you recognize it if it happened again, or would it just feel like another normal day, right before everything changes? Stories like these don't give clear answers, they don't follow rules, and maybe that's why they stay with us. Because deep down, we want to believe we have control, but these stories suggest something else, something unpredictable, something we can't fully understand, and that's what makes them truly dark. If you've ever experienced something like this, or heard a story that still gives you chills, drop it in the comments. I read them all, and some of your stories might even be featured in future episodes. And if this video made you think, share it with someone who enjoys mysteries that stay in your mind long after they end. This has been The Dark Brief, and sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that feel just a little too real.